I'm glad you've joined us on the interview. You may not realize it yet, but your life is about to change. Welcome to another episode of The Interview. I'm Dr. Rick Wadge, and we have some great friends that have come into the studio from the area of Itamar, which is somewhere by Judea and Samaria. You're going to love them. We have Moshe and Leah Goldsmith here in the studio. Hey, you guys.
Shalom.
Good to be here. Thank you.
It's the first time I'm meeting you, but I have definitely seen you before on the Joshua and Caleb report.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that. I've seen it a couple of times. It was a good show.
If you saw me, you saw him.
So you were on as well.
I'm always hiding behind my wife.
I know. That's the thing. Okay, so let's talk about, you're in the States, but where do you live? What are you doing? What is, I will use the term ministry. What is your purpose? What are you doing?
Okay, basically, I think you can say we combine two worlds. In one world, we live a very simple life, a life in the biblical mountains of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Samaria, the central location of where Abraham entered the land of Israel. So we live our simple lives of raising children. We have 5 children. We are educators involved in education. And I can say there's another world because the other things we do, we travel the world to speak about our special town, Itamar, in the biblical mountains. And we believe that as a nation of Israel, we have a very important purpose of bridging the world of Israel to the world about. Unfortunately, we're witness in our times of terrible, I would say, strife in the world, bloodshed in the world. We all strive and we all want peace one day, true peace in the world. And we believe, as the Bible instructs us, that when Israel is strong in its land, it will be a light to the nations and to reach out to the nations. And we believe that's our calling in life, to go out to the world and teach about the biblical land and about what the purpose and function of the nation of Israel is all about.
Now, I think it's interesting that you talk about the need for instructing people about the land of Israel, specifically Itamar, when Israel's in the news every single day, the turmoil, the unrest, the injustices, all of that, and yet there's a need to rightly educate people of what really is going on in the land. Mm-hmm. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, like Donald Trump's expression of fake news. But fake reality, fake history, people are not following the truth in the world. And that's, again, part of what we're doing, to tell the truth, to reach out. People have to know what's going on.
So what is going on?
Redemption. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on.
Explain that.
And we're preparing for it. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought that 2 Brooklyn kids, born and raised Americans, would all of a sudden one day, me? Yeah, you, get up now and go to a land that I will show you. And that's basically how it happened. We came out to the heartland of Israel when there was literally nothing there but rocks and stones, and lived there for the last 33 years of our lives, Baruch Hashem. That was a divine appointment, and it really wasn't so much us, it's God. Mm-hmm. And it's how each and every one of us can join in that mission to glorify God's name.
I have had Hashem has been so good to me, and having a huge part of my life to be surrounded by survivors of the Holocaust. And I remember one man, I would say young man, it didn't matter how old he was, he seemed like a young man to me, his spirit. He was in Israel after the Holocaust when it was swampland.
That's correct.
So when you look at Israel now, it's hard to imagine what it was and how the Romans had just devastated the land.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I'm the daughter of Holocaust survivors. Mm-hmm. And it is truly a miraculous generation that we can stand with 1 foot on the valley of the dry bones and with our other foot stand in the land that's come alive. So it is nothing but prophecy coming true, and God's enduring promise living through us, each and every one of us, how we make this happen. It's a miracle.
It is, I was gonna say miraculous.
It's a miracle.
It really is, the thought that, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it sounds like you're echoing what I'm about to say, or I'm echoing yours, and that is that it really is like the words of Scripture are coming to pass before our very eyes. That's what it feels like to me.
Now, for sure, if we look for example, the prophet Ezekiel, we say in Hebrew Yecheskel, and he describes the dry bones. He describes a vision that if anyone reads the chapters, 36, 37, if you read those chapters of Ezekiel, what comes to mind? What comes to your mind when you read those chapters about the bones and the slain, the Holocaust? You mentioned the Holocaust.
Yeah, it does.
It's so clear. And what we see happening is the exact divine plan of history. And I always say this, if someone wants to find God in the world, they have to use the nation of Israel as the map. That's the map.
I agree.
And if you look, you see, what did the world say when they saw the Jews in Auschwitz and Birkenau and all the other terrible death camps in these open pits of bones and dry bones? The world said, the hope for Israel is gone now. Israel's been replaced. Replacement theology, which was an anti-Semitic doctrine which has taken mankind through many, many, many years. To this very day, there are those that are still holding on to those with their dear life to the replacement theology. But here God was saying, my people, don't lose faith. That's a lesson of Israel in all situations. And just like we see from Egypt, hundreds of years of slavery, we came out of slavery. Israel teaches hope, and we see from those bones, God says, can these bones live? And the prophet says, you know God. And what happens, those bones stand up like a mighty army. God breathes life in them, and he says, my people of Israel, I'll bring you back from the four corners of the world, back to the land of Israel. And then I will give you a heart of flesh. Your heart of stone will be removed, and the heart of flesh will be placed within your hearts. So that exactly is what's happening today in the land. Could anyone deny truth? That is truth. That is reality. And that is exactly what's happening today. In a nutshell, it's one prophecy of the many. We can bask ourselves in the beauty of Torah and see in new insight into everything we read and learn. But that message, I think, should be heard in every corner of the world.
It will.
But it's happening today.
It can be. It can be.
Well, with what we're talking about today, it's going to go out to the four corners of the earth.
Amen.
I believe next week this will air from when we're filming this right now.
Amen.
And we have people all over Romania, Russia, all over the world. Islands, little islands in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean. Little islands, people are watching these interviews.
Unbelievable.
Well, if we look at
Yes.
a world map and you see where Israel is located, a tiny little dot right in the center. I know that it's been called the apple of God's eye, but I like to call it the pupil of God's eye, because it's a tiny little speck that can see everything. And all the people connecting to Israel right now are part of this awakening. So it's a huge thing.
I am so honored to have Jewish brothers and sisters. And when I see what's going on in the world, we talk about fake news, and they constantly talk about, giving up the land for peace, giving up land for peace. I am so grateful that the Jewish people have learned, well, they've always had a backbone, but they realize maybe more now than ever, they cannot give away that which the enemy will use, as we saw in Gaza. And what the enemy will use, they don't want enemies. You don't want enemies. But people that consider you enemies will use against you. And I am so grateful that you stood up and said no.
Right. But I say it's even much greater, and I want to stress this point, is that Israel, God gave the only country in the world that's defined, its borders are defined by the creator of the universe, is the state of Israel.
Yes.
God gave us the borders.
Yes.
And for someone to come along and say, this is mine, and take it away from Israel, they're going. It's a rebellion against God.
I agree.
So what God is telling us, when Israel is living in its full borders, then we can have true peace in the world. True peace doesn't come by someone giving away what is rightfully theirs and giving in to their identity as a people, as a nation. Israel's nation is so important, our nation. And if someone weakens us by trying to take away our what's rightfully ours, the land that God gave us, then they'll be bringing a terrible detrimental effect in the world. They'll cause damage to the world. So the world should know when Israel's in its land, strong and living in its borders, the world will be blessed with bounty and every possible blessing they can think of. So that's so important, much more than the security. What will they do to us if we give away? Because that changes all the time. The most important thing is to know that it's a godly border, Israel. God has given to us, we have to follow that. That's how we
I
look at
agree.
it.
I love that perspective.
You know, I want to add to that and say that the land covenant that was made with our forefathers was exactly in those contested areas of Shechem, Jerusalem, and Hebron. Those are land covenant. So that when people open the Bible and say they love the Bible and they love Israel, but at the same time they're being inundated with news about the West Bank, many do not even make a connection between the fact that those two places are indeed the same. The land covenant places are the places that they want to make Judenrein. That is a German terminology for clean of Jews. So that it's become a challenge to the people that live there. If we remember the promise that was given to Abraham, that this land will be yours forever and ever, Abraham still had to fight in wars. He still had to plow the land. He still had to acquire it through great hardship. So that when people wave a flag and say, I love Israel, they have to know that the people living in those places truly need your help right now.
What can they do? And how can they reach you guys? Let's make sure we get that into this episode. So let's talk about that.
Well, we one of the things, like I said, we do by reaching out to the world, we formed an organization called Friends of Itamar. Friends of Itamar is an organization that tries to develop and build the town, strengthen a town that was hit so hard over the years in terror attacks. Just a couple of days ago, we had a miracle on our soil that was all over the news, where 2 terrorists planned to infiltrate the community, and with explosives, and thank God they were caught. One of them was caught at least before they were able to. The army came and was able to neutralize the bomb.
Why Itamar?
Well,
Why would they go after Itamar?
Itamar is again, since we're centrally located in the biblical heartland of Israel, and we're surrounded in certain areas by a very hostile area called. You want to explain the? You want to explain about?
Well, we could explain it practically and
You
spiritually.
like talking about the hump of the mountains, then?
Well, okay, first, let's give a geographical perspective to what we're talking about. People that know Israel know that we have a valley, the Jordan Valley, on the eastern side of Israel, and on the western side of Israel, we have the Mediterranean Sea. Those are low-lying areas. Most of Israel's population lives on the coast. But when we come into the land, to the middle of the land, we ascend to a mountain range that goes up and down the very center of this land. This range is called the path of the patriarchs because that is where our patriarchs and matriarchs walked the land in their story. There, they settled the roots, they put down the first pegs, the primordial pegs of the land. And it is in those places that I mentioned, Shechem, Hebron, Jerusalem, those are the places that the enemy of God wants to be cleaned out of Jews. But let's think why. What is this obsession with this place? So if we could consider the body of Israel, like I mentioned, the way it is structured. So the very center, that mountain is what we call the spinal cord of Israel. And each of the places, starting in the north with Shechem, Shiloh, Bethel, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron, which is really one contiguous line. Each place is a vertebrae holding in an internal organ of the life of the body, because the land of Israel, unlike other lands, has a soul. So the people that are living in these places are literally putting their life on the lines for these places, because every place is surrounded by spiritual husks that want to get in and attack God. So you ask, why Itamar? Why did we lose 23 people to terror over the last 20 years?
Okay,
It's hard to fathom.
Okay, answer the importance of realizing spirituality is like a magnet. When the holy you are, the holiest things are, they attract. That's an understanding, for example, the Temple Mount today. It is like literally on dynamite. The whole area is very sensitive. The holy cities of Israel today are, of course, Jerusalem, our holiest place. Hebron, the city of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. And Shechem, the city where Itamar is, our surroundings, that whole area. These are the three major cities of Israel. And the holiest cities of Israel, where our history begins and centered around. So you're warring against those that represent God and that are standing out for what's right, to the holiness of the world, to goodness in the world. So these forces that come along and want to fight against you and prevent you from letting God's light shine in the world, that is exactly the war we're talking about now. It's a spiritual war as well as a physical war. And we are standing there trying, in our sense that we're simple people living in a simple place. But our voice has to be heard all over the world. We have to tell the truth about what's going on, that here we are living a simple life in the land, and people every day are thinking about how to enter our community and murder innocent women and children and men just because they're Jewish living in the land. And we've experienced this, the Fogel massacre. We've heard of when a mother and a father and 3 children were murdered in their home on a Friday night.
Yes.
And many other attacks, and of course other places of Israel as well. So Israel, a nation that's fighting for peace, of the true peace, to help other people, to do good in the world, we're always villainized. Look at the United Nations until, again, Donald Trump came along and made a big change. So we are grateful to the leadership of the United States today, and of course the Vice President's visit.
And supporters of Israel all over the
And
world.
of course, the great supporters of Israel today, that they're standing, again, like watchmen on the wall. They're there, and they're standing against these other forces that are trying to go against Israel. And it says again, Abraham blessed those who stand with Abraham, he'll stand with them. He'll have their backs as well.
Yeah.
So that's really the issue today. It's spirituality,
Yes.
holiness against anti-holy.
Yeah, but there's also a paradox here, because after these terrible incidents that are being mentioned, people have come into our town, into Itamar, and they've sat down under the tree and turning around and looking at the grapevines and Jeremiah, the prophecies coming true, and watching the peacefulness of it. So it's a strange paradox, because you have this kind of energy going on where God's peace is reigning in the land, but at the same time, the enemy is trying to attack it. So we need to focus now on securing it, building it up, making it better, making it greener, and being a light to the nations. And we're full of hope.
That's getting back what we do, Friends of Itamar.
Yes.
Our
Yeah, it's
nonprofit
amazing. I mean, you'll come and you won't feel terrorism. You'll come and you'll
Right.
feel peace.
You'll feel like you're at home.
You'll feel like you're home, because you're home.
And the times that I have been there, whether with a network supporting
Yeah.
the Jewish people or on my own, they don't want you to go to those areas.
That's correct.
And which is really a shame.
That's
because of all the biblical connections.
It all begins there. No one's bringing you there. So it's so strange. It's crazy.
Including biblical tours. Biblical tours,
Oh,
many,
that's sure.
they do not come out to the heartland, no.
Skip right over
They-
Itamar.
Yes,
But I've been through some walls to see
Yes.
locations
Yes.
that I wish we'd never gone. Please get me back into Israel. This is not good.
yeah,
Um,
yes.
Our heart, Israel TV Network, ITVN. And the reason we called it Israel TV Network was because the 3 of us that founded this, and then we have others that have come along and they're supporting and helping us through this, all had very dear Jewish relationships that had transformed our lives, transformed our understanding of God. And we also understood that there is a spiritual battle going on like none we have ever seen before. And when you think about the craziness that so many people have these crazy ideas about the Jewish people, controlling the world, controlling the world's finances, behind 9/11. The list goes on. It's like
Conspiracy theory.
No, it's nuts.
Yes.
It's anti-Semitism.
It's anti-Semitism.
Oh, but you know what?
I can take off my yarmulke and show you my horns.
Yeah, right.
No, but it's just.
But you have to admit, though, that it's better than apathy, because it's an
At least
obsession in some way.
where the lines are drawn.
Well, it's being drawn to Israel. So what we have to do is also not give up on those people and ask Hashem to turn their hearts back to the truth. That's what I believe.
I agree. And so
Yes.
our main focus here is to help Christians understand their position within the Jewish design of what
Yes.
God has put together. I've always said that there's only one religion created by God, if you want to call it a religion, and that's Judaism. And everything else comes from man's imaginations and twists and turns and ideas. And so, to help Christians understand their part in supporting the Jewish people, supporting the land of Israel, standing firm against anti-Semitism, standing firm about helping the Jewish people stay in their land, keep their land,
Amen.
Put out the fires of fake news. And then make sure the Jewish people know, look, we have let you down in the past. We are not. This group is never going to do that. We're going to stand with you through whatever comes our way.
Thank you so much.
And we are, that is our heartbeat.
Amazing.
And it's just, I always walk away from interviews with my Jewish family
Yeah.
saying, we didn't do enough. What more can we do? So what more can people do?
First of all, they can go to our website, Tori Tamar Support Israel, where we have an active.com.
And we'll put that at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have an active website that teaches also Torah teachings, shows beautiful pictures of how the land is coming alive, and different projects that people could become involved with, helping with children, helping with security.
Is there a
helping-
need? Is there a need?
Yes, a great need. A great, great need.
And because it's.
That's right. Not everyone could
I was
live
just
there,
telling you
but
that, right, I told you one of
Yes.
our mission statement is to turn Itamar into an important city,
yes,
to build, here you are in Amarillo,
yes.
right? But we feel, you see how it's important to build a city with all
That's right. We're bridging now with
Because
Amarillo.
all the simple things on the ground, it makes it a better place, it makes people calm, and that's how you turn it around. The more power, the more you build and develop, the more spiritual power and energy is created on the ground, you can influence and have a tremendous influence. It's exponential the way it grows in the world.
That's right.
So we're focusing on that little mission, but it's a great mission in our eyes.
Because we're also preparing it for the days to come.
Right. Ari and Jeremy, which I know are friends of yours, and they're friends of ours as well. It's amazing how they talk about preparation.
Yes.
As they're building out there, and
Yes.
they've started this construction
Yes,
project.
yes,
And I can see it. Can't
Yeah.
you see? You can see what's going to happen.
yes,
People
you
flowing
can
in
see.
and out.
Yes. So it's like God is using each person. You could be living on an island, Trinidad, Tobago, and you can be part of it.
Right.
And we have viewers in Trinidad. So.
And we'll be there on the ground. We'll be there on the ground. But, most of the people on the ground don't look like they're dressed for Shabbat. They're farmers, and they're sweating, and they're soldiers, and they're bleeding. And regular families having a hard time driving on the road, rocks being thrown at them, terror victims, widows, orphans, and the list goes on. They need our help.
I've seen some of the videos of these kids,
That's-
Palestinian kids, throwing rocks through windows, stopping
Yes.
cars.
It's a daily
scaring,
event.
Pulling them out of their cars,
Yes.
beating them.
Yes.
And I just weep. Why? It's foolishness. There's no reason.
So it's unfortunately rooted into what they're being taught in their education system is totally warped. And instead of teaching the sanctified life, they're sanctifying death. And everything that's involved in the violence and
But we can't let it push us off from our mission.
Right.
In making it peaceful, secure, beautiful,
Right.
and a great place to welcome you when you come and make it more comfortable.
Part of the great thing we do is reaching out to the nations, and that we feel that
Yes.
we've had tremendous friends slowly growing over the years, and it's amazing coming to spend time on Itamar and to hear our story and to learn about who we are. And we're meeting amazing people, seeing how God created a world of billions of amazing people over the world.
Yes,
Such special, precious souls that are walking through history now.
That's it.
yes.
In a historic time.
What will people see when they come to Itamar?
Life. So that's the word, life.
What does the land look like?
I want to show you. It's unbelievable.
It's beautiful.
Hills, mountains, grapevines, chickens walking freely, not in coops, people not in coops. Don't get the wrong idea. You can ride your bike for hours inside Itamar. It's very rural, country land.
We're the largest landmass of a single community in Judea and Samaria. So we extend from all the way across to the Jordan Valley. You can look at our peaks. We look over, right over the Jordan Valley. You can see where Abraham entered the land. You can see where Joshua, when Israel came to do the blessing and the curse on the mountains of Gerizim and Eval, you see that. So we're surrounded by biblical scenery, the gem of the hills, literally the gem of the hills, we call it.
I have never felt a moment of anxiety, fear at all when I've been in Israel.
Amen.
It feels safer than in
It does.
Texas.
It
or
does.
anywhere else.
Or New York City.
Feel complacent. It's I always say it's like a long distance phone call, or you can have a direct phone call to God. And in Israel, and standing on Itamar, we feel we're at a direct line of conversation and communication with the Creator of the universe.
And you'll feel it too.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you
being
for
in the
having us.
studio, For beginning this conversation. I think we should probably do another one for next week's show
Okay.
and get more into what you see God doing in your midst. And,
Yes.
thank you so much for being a part of the interview. And, we so appreciate the support you give to those who come here and film. And you're just absolutely wonderful. You're the heartbeat of what's going on at ITBN, the support of the Jewish people. We just love our Christian brothers and sisters and our Jewish brothers and sisters. And we thank you again. Until next time, shalom, shalom.